Hello, I'd like to welcome you to this webinar, End of Service Transition, Preparing for Life After AmeriCorps. I'm your host, Andy King. If you're almost done with your VISTA service, congratulations. And now the question is, do you know what you're doing next? It's okay if you don't yet know what you'll be doing after service. The important thing is that you've started to think about life after VISTA and that you're ready to learn about some options as well as the administrative steps to closing out of your VISTA term of service. In this session, we'll give some advice about how to keep your project going after you are gone. Supporting this session is Jessica Knight, who will be monitoring the Q&A and the chat panels with me, and our producer is Andy Clark. We have a great lineup of presenters participating in today's session. First, I'd like to welcome my colleague Molly Pelzer from the VISTA Training Unit, who will be leading the presentation. Jennifer Brooks is team lead at the VISTA Member Support Unit, and she will be sharing tips and answering questions about your end of service requirements and your benefits. Then we have two VISTA alumni who will both be sharing more about their own experiences transitioning to life after VISTA. Ryan Cassett served as a VISTA member in 2010, and after his year of service, decided to pursue a Master of Public Policy degree at the University of Southern California. Ryan has also been active with the AmeriCorps Alums Network and even served as a board member. After serving as a VISTA member in 2007, Deborah Lytle went on to serve in AmeriCorps NCCC, and then eventually transitioned into a job at the CNCS Pennsylvania State Office, in a role where she currently supports VISTA members. We'll be hearing from both Ryan and Deborah a little bit later on, but now I'm going to turn it over to Molly Pelzer.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As your VISTA service comes to an end, there are many things that will demand your attention. You're probably thinking about what needs to be done to wrap up your project and make a clean handoff. Maybe you've moved for service and you might find yourself moving again soon. And perhaps you're trying to figure out a job or school as your next path. Well, we'll talk about all of these topics and more on today's webinar. We'll start by covering what you need to do in order to wrap up your service year, and then look ahead to the many different opportunities, decisions, and benefits you will have to consider in your life after VISTA. We have a lot of information and tips for you, so during the session today, we have built in 2 designated times for Q&A to answer your questions live. And also, as Andy mentioned, this seminar will be recorded and posted to the VISTA campus for later reference. Before we start talking about what you'd like to do after service, let's take just a minute and review what you'll need to do to wrap up your current project and ensure the capacity you're building is sustainable. It's never too early to think about the sustainability of your project or program and what you'll need to do to hand off the work that you've done. As a VISTA, you have the best view of your project, and you may be the best person to know what knowledge, files, or other items will need to be transferred or what capacities need to be built later on. So you should ask yourself, what should you do in order to keep your project alive once you are gone? And what needs to happen for the handoff of responsibilities to be an effective one? At PSO, we defined capacity building as the transfer of knowledge, products, or relationships. No matter how much information you gained, how many deliverables created, or how many professional contacts you've developed, if this information isn't intentionally passed on to others at your organization or in your community, your work as a VISTA will not be sustainable. Be sure you work with your supervisor and make a plan for passing on the capacity you've built during your year of service. And we've got a few helpful tips to share with you to get you started in this process. One of the first things to do is make sure everything is organized and saved in a location where it's easily accessed by your supervisor or other teammates. You should also make sure to share the password for anything that is password protected. Make sure that everything that needs to be documented is actually documented, including contact lists and so forth, so that a new VISTA can start start early and hit the ground running. And this is a really important step in case you are the last VISTA for your organization as well. So make a list of the knowledge, products, relationships, and systems that need to be transferred to someone else by the end of your year of service. You and your supervisor might also want to meet with key staff and others in the community to inform them of change and discuss the transition coming up so that they know what to expect, what they can do to facilitate things during the transition. And you should also consider preparing a need-to-know items for the next person. There's important guidelines for doing specific tasks, maybe some pointers for approaching some community groups that you've had great success with, lessons learned from what you've done or what's been done before. Again, remember to organize those paper files, making it easier for the next person to find what they need. And also, when appropriate, assist with the recruitment efforts if another VISTA will follow you. It might be as simple as you posting links to the position announcement using social media, or maybe you even have some friends that you think would be great for the position. So while we've provided a brief overview of how to keep your project moving ahead, we of course have other sustainability resources for you. There's some webinars listed on the screen. These webinars are great sustainability conversation starters. If you are unsure of your role with regards to sustainability, review these webinars and set up a meeting afterwards with your supervisor to discuss what you've learned and also what the next steps would be or should be for you or the organization. So now let's review some key administrative tasks that you'll need to take care of before and after your end of service date. Jen, can you please talk to us about some forms?
Thanks, Molly, and I'd like to welcome everybody on the call as well. Approximately 90 days before your end of service date, you will receive an automated email from the My.AmeriCorps portal telling you to complete your Future Plans exit form. The Future Plan exit form link can be found on your member homepage at the top of the screen. For the Future Plans form, you're only required to complete Part A. The choices available to you in Part A are 1, to extend service for less than 1 year, 2, re-enroll for an additional year, 3, complete services as scheduled, or 4, terminate service early. Once you have completed Part A, your supervisor completes Part B, which includes an assessment of your service. After your supervisor completes Part B, you have a chance to respond to your supervisor's comments. After providing a response, Part C is completed by the VISTA State Office. Lastly, the VMSU takes the appropriate action as indicated in Part C of the Future Plans form. There is a travel section in Part A asking you to fill in information about how you're going to return to home and where you are returning. This is only applicable to members who were approved for relocation at the beginning of service. For those of you who were approved for relocation, now let's look at the end of service travel reimbursement. If you were approved to relocate at the beginning of service, you will be reimbursed for mileage between your project site back to the home of record that was established at the beginning of service. Change to home of record must be requested prior to your 10th month of service via email, and your request must be approved by the VMSU director. Please refer to Chapter 11, End of Service, found in the VISTA Member Handbook for more information. The VISTA Member Handbook is on the VISTA Campus website. You do not need to complete an additional travel request profile. The close of service travel reimbursement is handled internally by VMSU staff. If eligible, the VMSU will provide you with a travel reimbursement voucher no later than 15 days prior to your end of service date. An automated email from My.AmeriCorps is sent to you once the voucher has been posted. The voucher can be accessed from your member homepage under a help request with the subject line, Close of Service Voucher. The help request will tell you how to return the voucher for reimbursement and where to mail the voucher. Once the VMSU receives your returned Close of Service voucher, processing takes 8 to 10 weeks before reimbursement to your direct deposit account occurs. If 10 weeks have passed, contact the National Service Hotline and ask to speak with the VISTA Member Support Unit. Please maintain a current direct deposit account through My.AmeriCorps, or your payment could be delayed. In addition to the Future Plans form, you are asked to complete an AmeriCorps exit survey. Members are asked to take the exit survey within 60 days of their service completion date and can access the survey through the member portal. It is very important that all members complete the member exit survey, and we need your help in making sure this happens. The data from this survey helps us plan for future members. Unique to the VISTA program is the choice between receiving the Education Award or the End-of-Service Cash Stipend as your end-of-service benefit. You have until the 10th month of service to change from the Education Award to the Cash Stipend. However, if you have selected the Cash Stipend, you cannot change to the Education Award. So when in doubt of what benefit to choose, always pick the Education Award. You can always know what your deadline is to change from the Education Award to the Cash Stipend by clicking on the link End of Service Benefit Selection from your member home page. The screen will display the exact date you must change the benefit by for the switch to occur. If you have selected the Cash Stipend, you will receive it in 2 payments. $400 of the stipend is included in the second to last pay period of your term of service. The remaining balance is paid with your last living allowance pay period. Beware that both federal taxes and FICA are withheld from the end of service cash stipend, so don't expect to get the full gross amount. For those of you who elect the cash stipend, you can still put your education loans into deferment while you serve, but this is handled directly with the lending institution where your loans are held. Usually the type of deferment is called economic hardship. If you selected the Ed Award, we'll look at that benefit in just a bit. Now we're going to pause for a minute and take some of your questions. Andy, will you remind us how to ask questions over the phone?
Sure thing, Jennifer. So as I pointed out earlier, we have a question and answer panel on the right side of your screen. It's just below the chat, so if you'd like to ask a question that way, type your question in and be sure to send it to all panelists. And now, Melinda, could you give instructions for asking questions on the phone?
Thank you. To ask a question, please press *1. Please unmute your phone and record your name clearly when prompted. Please press *2 to withdraw your question. One moment, please.
Great, thank you. And while we're waiting for questions to come in, I'll just say we're going to pause for just a few minutes here to see what questions have come up so far. If we're not able to get to your question during this little pause, we'll have more time at the end. So, we hope you'll hold on for that as well. All right, so we do have a question that's come in through the Q&A. Jennifer, I'll direct this one to you. It says, in regard to the stipend, will the payment be made through direct deposit?
Yes, that's right, Andy. Your payment will be through direct deposit. It comes along with the last 2 pay periods of your living allowance.
Great, thank you. And let me just check with Melinda to see if we have any questions on the phone yet.
No questions.
Okay, great. Well, please just interject if one gets queued up there. Okay, next up, let's see, Velma asks, I have been, whoops, sorry, it just disappeared for me. Sorry, it's going to take me just a second to reopen this. She says, I've been unable to find the Eli Segal forms information that are needed to be filled out. So, Jen, could you maybe give a little bit of instruction about where to find the Eli Segal Ed Award form?
I guess I'm not sure what the question is referring to and what form you're referring to by the EGOT. I mean, I've heard of it, but maybe that we could table that question until I understand more what is being asked.
Okay, great. And Velma, feel free to post a little more detail in the Q&A, and we'll come back to that question in a bit. Cornelia asks, if you decide to extend your VISTA service by another year, what are the next steps after you complete the future plans form?
Andy, are you directing that to me? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, that's for you.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question again?
Yeah. So if you decide to re-enroll in another year of VISTA service, what are the next steps after completing the future plans form?
What happens is once you've indicated that you want to re-enroll for an additional year, again, Part B is completed by your supervisor. If they agree to that, they fill it out with re-enrollment, and then the state office will fill out Part C with re-enrollment as well. There really aren't any steps for you. It's an automatic, seamless process. There will be no interruption in pay. Nothing happens. As long as in Part C, if the state office approves your re-enrollment, you'll be re-enrolled and everything will continue on for an additional year.
Great. Okay, Jennifer, next up is a question from Nikita. She says, do I receive an end-of-service travel reimbursement if I were to terminate my service early?
Yes, and that's a great question. Even if you end your service early, if you relocated at the beginning of service, we will, of course, post a voucher for to reimburse you to go back to your home of record. It doesn't matter if you end early or end at the regular time.
Okay, great. Let's see. I think we'll pause here. We've got some other questions that I know are going to be covered in the next section, and then for the questions we haven't been able to get to yet, we'll come back to those later on in the presentation. So, Molly, can you now take us to what comes next?
I would love to, Andy. Thank you, and thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone, for those great questions. We've quickly explored the project sustainability portion of the end of service and also some of the responsibilities that you have administratively as a VISTA member. Now we're going to switch gears and start talking about you and the impending transition. Have you thought about what options are available or what steps you might need to take? And remember, like Andy said at the beginning, it's okay if you don't know exactly what you'll do after service. So I'd like to hear from you. Please answer the poll on the right side of your screen. What will you do after your VISTA service? We see a lot of VISTAs that might decide to further their education, launch a career, continue service. Some of you have already been talking about that already. Maybe there's another plan. Maybe you just plan to travel or take some time off, take a little bit of a sabbatical, or perhaps maybe you're unsure and you don't know. We'll give you just a little bit of time to answer those questions in the poll, and then we will continue with the presentation. But as many of you know, VISTA is a very unique experience that comes with many different options and opportunities that are special only to VISTA. It's hard not to feel a lot of pressure with such a big change looming in the horizon. And it's also important to know that you can use this time to build your skill set so that you don't need to land your dream job right away. So don't put any additional pressure on yourself that you don't need to, because this time can be stressful enough as it is. So let's see if the poll results have come in yet so that we can see how many of you will further your education, maybe launch a career, continue service, and there we go. So it looks like many of you, the majority of you, are planning to launch a career. The next most popular is further education. No surprise there. We see those as the top two choices. And then also continuing service. 41 of you plan to do that as well. So that's most typical what we see of VISTA members as they transition out of service. For those of you that are doing something other than that, I hope it's fun and exciting and that you will continue to serve and support your community in some way. And for those of you that don't know or weren't able to answer, hopefully this webinar will give you some ideas, maybe some additional information, and things to think about so that we can help you transition to the next stage in your life. As I mentioned, most VISTAs follow one of three paths. VISTAs either pursue education, putting that education award to work. You may launch or relaunch a career. You can use NCE, the non-competitive eligibility, or Employers of National Service Connections, which we'll talk about both later. Maybe you'll want to serve again with VISTA or another stream of service such as Peace Corps, NCCC, Teach for America, AmeriCorps, etc. Regardless, there are so many options available, but right now it's important for you to consider all of your options and understand the best way to travel down each path. So even if you don't want to pursue education right now, it'll be important for you to understand what steps you should take should you want to do it in the future. But to help you reflect on your options, let's start with an activity called Heart plus Head equals Hustle. I'll set up the exercise, and then you can participate and share your responses in the chat as we go. Heart plus Head equals Hustle is an exercise that will help you identify work that aligns your heart and your head. The heart is what you're passionate about and what moves you to action. The head are your many unique gifts and traits and skills. The hustle is what happens when your heart and your head connect and your interests align. So even if you think you know what you want to do, this activity might help you give you some additional direction and drive. Let's start talking about the heart. On a piece of paper, go ahead and draw two circles that slightly overlap, like you see on the screen. Label one heart, and in this area, you will write the issues, ideas, people, and the other things that really move you. I'll read through a series of short questions, and as I'm doing that, I'd like you to reflect and write down anything that comes to mind in the heart circle. Remember, these are issues, ideas, people, or things that really move you. So what issues or ideas make your heart beat faster, whether because you are so deeply compelled by them, or because you are angered by them, or because you are overjoyed by them? What social or environmental problems do you want to see solved? And when or where have you seen injustice? And what did it look like? So I hope that you're taking just a minute to think about what you can put in your heart circle, in your heart bubble, the issues that make your heart beat faster, environmental problems or social issues that you'd like to see solved. And if you wouldn't mind, I would really like to hear from you about what you wrote in your heart bubble. Did you write down issues or movements? Maybe you wrote down a need that you see in the community. So if you would like to share your responses in the chat field, I would love to take a look at some of them. And remember that the heart circle will include issues, ideas, people, and the things that move you. And you can use the chat feature to share some of the things that you wrote down. So it looks like there's a few coming in: giving back to the community, women's rights, economic justice, education, police brutality, underserved communities, human civil rights issues, marriage equality, immigration. Wow, you guys are on a roll. These are great. LGBTQ, education, abuse, gender equity, hunger, animal abuse and waste, sustainable agriculture, natural health, refugees, community participation, food access. Oh, this is a really great list, you guys. Working with troubled youth, hope, pollution, environmental issues. That is fantastic. I would encourage you throughout the presentation to keep thinking about what you might put in your heart bubble. We're going to come back to this presentation in just a little bit, but feel free to add more to your heart bubble, to your heart circle as we move through the presentation. And again, thank you so much for sharing. Let's move ahead and start by talking about some education options. Some of you might decide to pursue education after your VISTA year, and there are many options available. In addition to college or grad school and technical training, keep in mind there are other forms of professional development available. There might be certificate programs offered by a Title IV institution that give you a solid introduction to a field of work or an area of study that interests you. And certificate programs are a fast and cheap way to gain great skills and excellent exposure. If you are considering additional education, ask yourself these 5 questions before grabbing your backpack and heading to school. 1, is it necessary to break into the field? Does everyone in the field have an advanced or specialized degree? Let's see, can we get the slide to go ahead, please? Number 2, is it necessary to advance in the field? Research the leadership. Are they all credentialed, and what's their experience like? Number 3, are you really passionate about it? And will you still be passionate about this topic in 10 years? Is it something that you wrote down in your heart bubble? And number 4, do you need it now? Maybe education at a later point in life is okay. Perhaps you can take time now to gain work experience in a field and consider the options of pursuing a graduate or advanced degree later. And finally, the big one that many of us struggle with is whether or not you can afford it. An education award will help pay for some schooling, but it probably won't cover all of it. Do you know how to get the rest of it covered? Many of you might feel as though you need to continue your education, and while it might be true for some of you, not everyone needs to go to grad school. Before you decide to pursue additional education, there is a wonderful on-demand webinar entitled Planning Your Post-Service Career that includes a section on thinking through your options. The above questions are pulled from that webinar, so check it out for more insight. Now, I'm very happy that we are going to hear from VISTA alum Ryan Cassett about his own decision to pursue graduate school after service. Ryan?
Thank you, Molly, for the introduction, and thank you for having me on the presentation. I'll start by giving a bit of background on my service. I served as a VISTA member in the Native Americans to Work project, a very small program focused on building the workforce capacity of Native American communities across the country. Part of my project focused on green jobs. Though I'd always had an interest in the environment, my interest in sustainability really took off during that time. As my service was winding down and as I was preparing my next steps, I thought more and more that I wanted to work in advancing sustainable environmental policies as a career. Unfortunately, I wasn't exactly sure how. My undergraduate education was not in environmental science, and a number of job postings seemed to ask for multiple years of experience or graduate school. I decided that graduate school sounded like a good option, so I started to explore it. While I had the idea of going back to school, I wasn't entirely sure what for. So I looked into programs in public administration, policy, and planning, with a number of schools offering different concentrations in each. I planned to move back home to Los Angeles, take the GRE, and send in some applications. I researched a number of schools, including ones that offered to match the education award. And early on in my search, I went to the idealist.org grad fair. This was a great opportunity to connect with a number of schools that were not on my radar. Choosing a school was really difficult. There were so many good options that narrowing them down really seemed monumental. But the application process, while long, was really helpful. By applying to a lot of different schools with similar yet differing programs, I was able to choose from a menu of options. In the end, I chose the University of Southern California's Price School of Public Policy. I used my education award to pay for part of my tuition, and I got another generous scholarship from the school. Ultimately, grad school was the right option for me. It gave me a more rounded skill set, the ability to start to put some of my ideas into action, and it opened a lot of doors. Molly, back to you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, if you will pursue education, one great benefit of the VISTA service is, of course, the End of Service Education Award that you can earn. You can use the ED award to pay down current student loan balances or even future school loans and more expenses related to education. Because everyone has different circumstances, it's important that you know about the resources available to help make decisions about using your education award. If you haven't already, review the Education Award website to learn more about the award. You can learn how to form a strategy and how to use it, and also discover other post-service opportunities related to school and student loans. As you can see from the two examples on this slide, there are a lot of different questions you may have about the Education Award and how to use it. This website will help answer your questions so that you can make the best use of your Education Award. An important benefit related to the Education Award is the Education Award Match Program. There are many schools that have agreed to help AmeriCorps alumni by waiving application fees, providing a percentage of matching the Education Award, and in some cases, schools are maybe even willing to double the Education Award and offer thousands of dollars of assistance that can go towards the cost of attendance. So if your school currently doesn't match the Ed Award, don't let that stop you from asking. One VISTA shared a story recently where she successfully lobbied her school to match her Ed Award even though they weren't originally on the list. So as you can see, it never hurts to ask. Often VISTAs have questions about how to access and manage their Ed Award in My.AmeriCorps. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jennifer so she can share some tips about using the award funds. Jennifer?
Thank you, Molly. VISTAs who have chosen the Education Award will see the balance of the award under the link Education Award. Once your status changes to completed service, the balance becomes available for making payments. Additionally, a secondary benefit becomes available. A link for Create Interest Accrual Payment will become active. This allows you to request any interest that accrued while your student loans were in the AmeriCorps forbearance to be paid. These payments do not come out of the Education Award balance. They are in addition to that. One thing to note is that during a period of extension, the only end-of-service benefit option available is the cash stipend. This means you can't continue to put your loans into an AmeriCorps forbearance during the extension, as you won't have the Education Award during that period of extension. Please note that there are tax implications with regard to using your Education Award. You will be taxed for using your Education Award in the year that you use it. This may influence how much of the Education Award that you want to pay out in any given year. Additionally, you are also taxed on the interest accrual payments that you request the National Service Trust pay on your behalf in the year the interest is paid. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Molly.
Thanks, Jen. More great information. Returning to school can also mean taking on more debt, so I'll mention two key programs to help you manage additional student loans. These are also great options if you haven't selected the Ed Award as part of your AmeriCorps benefits. First is income-based repayment. It adjusts your monthly payments based on your income. It won't reduce the overall amount you have to pay back, but it will shrink your monthly payments to a much more manageable amount. And while in VISTA service, your payment could be as low as $0. Second is public service loan forgiveness. Do you have federal direct loans? And are you considering working in the nonprofit, government, or education sectors? If so, this is an amazing program, and you definitely want to learn about it. After working for 10 years in public service positions and making 120 on-time payments during that time, any balance of your federal direct loans is forgiven. You heard that right. After 10 years of work and payments, you have the opportunity to have your loan balance totally erased. You apply for this at the end of your 10 years, but I suggest investigating the program now so you can learn about the types of loans that are eligible and also how you should record your progress throughout that 10-year period. Information about this program can be found on the VISTA campus under Benefits of Service, and there's also a link that I think will come up in the chat or maybe has already gone into the chat. So it'll be more information about the College Cost Reduction and Access Act online. So finally, we have more webinars to tell you about. Don't forget to check out the webinars on the VISTA campus around the Education Award and student loans. And right now, there is an on-demand webinar entitled Using the Education Award and Managing Student Loans But join us on July 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, where you can get your questions answered during a live session about the Education Award. Before we move on to career options, let's go back to our Heart plus Head equals Hustle activity. You guys did such a great job with the heart bubble. I am really excited to hear what you might put in the head bubble. Fill in the head section with your skills, your abilities, your knowledge, connections, and everything else you bring to the table. You should also feel free to include hobbies and other special skills that you might have. Again, I would love to hear from you in the chat about what activities you might put in the head bubble, but I will read through some questions to help you think through this, but you should also feel free to write anything that comes to mind, and don't be afraid to brag. So what is something that you know inside and out? What have you learned for your VISTA service or from other positions? What are 3 things that your friends would all agree that you are the best at? And what is your role in groups? Are you usually the entertainer, the pragmatist, or the entertainer, the organizer, maybe? I would love to hear from you again. Please use the chat feature to share some of the things that you wrote down in your head circle. Did you write down skills or traits or roles that you typically fill? Let's see what we have. So we have networking, project management, writing, public speaking, entertaining, community outreach, and social service experience, event planning, writing and research. Let's see, all about volunteers. I love it, Norma. Event planner, public speaking, counseling, books, technology, education, recruitment, relationship building. Wow, you guys sound like a great group of VISTAs. Outdoor recreation, volunteer management, interpretation, farming, teaching, PowerPoint presentations, GIS water issues, mediating, being a positive poly. That is great. Well, those are some more really great things that you're putting in your head bubble. I'm hoping that you're finding this exercise good. I'm really enjoying it. You can keep your paper handy. We're going to keep moving on. But when we come back to this, we're going to fill in the space that overlaps, and that will be what we call your hustle. So stay tuned. Let's transition and discuss some career options. Some of you probably already have a good idea about job prospects after your service. Now let's take a look at some of the different sectors you might find yourself landing in after service. First is nonprofit. This area is the most similar to where you are currently doing your service. A nonprofit or social profit enterprise is focused on community needs, and it's a great place to be. But do you want to work for a nonprofit that does direct service, such as a homeless shelter? Maybe you want to work at a foundation. That's a good place to be if you're interested in working on policy issues or matters related to broad scope nationally, or maybe even an internationally mission-based organization. There are others on the list also, such as think tanks, associations, and advocacy groups. And don't forget about working at an educational institution. Many higher ed or learning centers conduct research on community impacts, social justice issues, and perhaps there's a department or a program that you can support. Not only can you get experience in an area, but it might also help you decide if you should pursue additional education. And I bet as a staff member, you would have access to some really nice education perks, such as reduced tuition, as well as a discount at the campus bookstore. In the private sector, definitely don't rule out working in the private sector. You can get excellent experience by spending a few years in the private or corporate environment. And don't forget that many companies are socially conscious and have their own employee engagement programs. I really think VISTA experience as a volunteer manager aligns very well with that area. Alternatively, if you are dedicated to philanthropic work, today there are many options at companies in the social or corporate responsibility and corporate philanthropy areas as well. And don't forget about working for the federal government. It might turn out that your 3 favorite letters are NCE, since VISTAs are and returned Peace Corps volunteers are unique in that they receive non-competitive eligibility upon successful completion of service. It never hurts to browse available positions and consider a career with the federal government. And while we're on the topic of federal positions, let's talk a little bit more in depth about non-competitive eligibility. Jen, can you talk to us about NCE?
I sure will. Thanks, Molly. Non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, is a hiring status granted to VISTAs for 1 year upon successful completion of your VISTA service. Non-competitive eligibility gives VISTAs a leg up in applying for positions in the federal government. Essentially, NCE permits you to compete in a smaller pool of applicants for federal jobs, drastically improving your chances for success. However, while your chances are improved, it is important to note that NCE does not guarantee that you will get a job. Having current NCE eligibility status does not mean that a former VISTA member is entitled to federal employment. Although non-competitive eligibility does not require, it does permit an agency to hire a former VISTA member who meets the minimum qualifications for the position without going through all the formalities of the competitive process. This 1 year NCE status is only available starting from the date of service completion, and it expires after 1 year. VISTA members who have completed less than 1 year of service, including training time, will not receive NCE status. Your service letter will be available to you online in your My AmeriCorps account once you have been exited from service. Though the benefit lasts for 1 year, a federal hiring agency may extend the period of a VISTA member's NCE status beyond 1 year for 2 additional years, for a total of 3 years, if the VISTA member is in the military service, Peace Corps, studying at a recognized institution of higher learning, or in another activity which, in the agency's view, warrants extension. Another thing to note is that many federal applications require the grade and series when providing NCE status. VISTA members do not have a grade and series since they were volunteers and were never previously federal employees. Members who are in NCE status must contact the employing agency to determine how they should fill out the application. Now let's look at how you would go about applying for federal jobs using your NCE status. Here is a screenshot of USAJobs. When searching for jobs on USAJobs.gov, VISTAs should go to the Advanced Search page and elect Yes to whether they are an applicant with non-competitive eligibility in the Applicant Eligibility section. When you apply for positions on USAJobs, you will be asked to attach your VISTA certification of service letter with non-compete in order to show proof of your NCE status. A couple of other helpful tips for navigating USAJobs. Finding jobs that are seeking out candidates with NCE can be a little challenging. You may want to search keywords such as VISTA, AmeriCorps, or Special Hiring Authority to get a listing of jobs that are looking to hire candidates with NCE. Alternatively, if you know an agency that you'd like to work with and they don't currently offer any NCE positions, reach out to the HR person listed on an announcement to see if preference is given to those with NCE. The USAJobs Resource Center even has a list of federal occupations by college major. So at this point, I'd like to turn it back to Molly.
Great. Thanks again, Jen. If you are specifically interested in positions with private, nonprofit, higher education, state or local municipalities or governments, etc., the Employers of National Service program is a very recent addition to your arsenal of job hunting tools. As part of the White House ceremony commemorating the 20th anniversary of AmeriCorps, President Obama launched Employers of National Service. And according to President Obama, if you are an employer who wants to hire talented, dedicated, patriotic, skilled, tireless, energetic workers, look to AmeriCorps and look to Peace Corps. Citizens who perform national service are special, and you really want them on your team. The Employers of National Service program strives to build a talent pipeline for employers. It allows VISTAs to access a list of employers who value the work they did during their service. You can see a full list of participating employers listed on the website. It also allows employers to have access to dedicated, highly qualified, and mission-oriented applicants. And remember that the list includes private, nonprofit, schools, state, and local government, as well as federal government employers. We highly recommend this resource to VISTAs looking to be employed by employers that really understand and value the skills that you've gained during your year of service. And here are just a few of the many employers of national service. You can see the variety in everything from nonprofit to federal agencies, private corporate firms, etc. Be sure to take a look at the list of employers on the website, and as you review the list, take a look at their open job positions, but don't let your research stop there. I'm sure many of you have a LinkedIn account, so connect with any of the potential employers and make sure you identify yourself as a VISTA alum. And also check your LinkedIn connections to see if anyone you know is currently employed by one of these organizations. You could talk to that person about what it's like to work there and ask if they could maybe help schedule an informational interview, because it never hurts to get your name out there. And here are some other great places to explore during your job search. First is the VISTA Campus Board. Because the status is very attractive to federal employers, we've created a job board forum on the campus. So while this is used to post a variety of positions for VISTA members and leaders, it is our main vehicle for other federal agencies to recruit VISTA alums with NCE status. So go to vistacampus.gov/jobs to view the current listings. Another really unique opportunity that's currently available to AmeriCorps ending service is the Eli Segal Fellowship. The Eli Segal Fellowship accepts highly qualified candidates for a 13-month immersion experience at the Corporation for National and Community Service. This fellowship allows alums to gain first experience in the federal agency and how we work to implement policy and also leverage national service in order to tackle some of the more pressing issues that's facing our nation. More information about the fellowship can be found on nationalservice.gov, and there's also a link that went into the chat. And of course, there's also AmeriCorps Alum. It's another great resource. The AmeriCorpsAlum.org website has a lot of great information for alums, such as a job board, virtual career fair, and also links to other AmeriCorps alums in the area. Jobs that are looking to hire alum with NCE also advertise on this job board. And I want to underscore that as a VISTA alum, you will have access to all of these resources throughout your life. Once a VISTA member, always a VISTA member. So keep the VISTA Campus Job Board and AmeriCorps Alum site bookmarked in your job search folder. And wrapping up our section on employment, here are some webinars that we've created to help you with your career planning that will be very helpful as you transition out of your VISTA service. Make sure you know how to sell yourself and what you did during your year of service. View our on-demand webinar, Translating VISTA Service to Your Resume. There's also a session on strategic networking as well as how to apply for federal positions. And remember, it's totally fine to use the next period in your life to build your skills, and you don't need to land your dream job right now. It's great if you do, but it's okay if it doesn't happen. So we've talked about pursuing education and starting a career. Let's talk about the possibility of doing more service, which some of you are hopefully are definitely planning to do. Some of you might be interested in serving another year with VISTA or maybe with a different program. Here are just a few of the different service opportunities that you might be interested in. VISTAs may want to serve another year with a VISTA program. You could do another year at the same site, or perhaps you could try another project area or build skills in a new area as well. You can take a look at postings on my.americorps.gov and review your options. In addition to doing another year of service as a VISTA, you might want to consider serving as a VISTA leader. VISTA leaders play a strategic role in a VISTA member's recruitment, retention, and also performance. Being a VISTA leader comes with all the benefits of the VISTA program, but includes an increased living allowance, and it's a great fit for anyone interested in being an ambassador, facilitator, mentor, liaison, recruiter, or a resource generator to currently serving VISTAs. You can also serve with AmeriCorps State and National. AmeriCorps engages more than 75,000 Americans in intensive service each year at nonprofit schools, public agencies, and community and faith-based groups across the country. Members address critical community needs in education, public safety, health, and the environment with direct service. There's also AmeriCorps NCCC, National Civilian Community Corps. NCCC is a full-time, team-based residential program for men and women ages 18 to 24, and members are assigned to one of 5 campuses nationwide for work. FEMA Corps is a unit of about 1,600 Service Corps members with AmeriCorps NCCC, and they are solely devoted to disaster preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. And finally, there's Peace Corps. Peace Corps is the preeminent international volunteer service program in the United States, which sends American volunteers overseas for 27 months of service in various program areas. VISTA is often referred to as the Domestic Peace Corps, so now that you've supported your country and community domestically, maybe you could consider going abroad. Visit peacecorps.gov for more information, and please note that VISTA and Peace Corps are both federal service programs, but they are administered by separate agencies. Now I am going to introduce Deborah Lytle. Deborah is going to share more about her post-service journey with us. Deborah?
Thanks, Molly. Hi, everyone. This is Deborah. I'm excited to be on the webinar today and share some of my experience with you. Right now, I work as a program officer for the Corporation for National and Community Service, developing and supporting national service programs in Pennsylvania. I first connected to VISTA while I was in college when I was a community volunteer working alongside a VISTA member at an anti-poverty nonprofit near my campus. After that, I served as a VISTA in Philadelphia in 2007, building the capacity of a tutoring program that engages college students in helping older immigrants learn English and gain U.S. citizenship. From there, I went on to find paid work teaching English to speakers of other languages, something I had trained others to do as part of my VISTA service. Then someone who knew me from my VISTA service recommended that I apply for a temp opening with CNCS, and that's when I first joined the CNCS staff. From there, my career started to move towards recruiting and supporting volunteers broadly, rather than focusing primarily on education programs as it had before. My passion for engaging people in volunteer work and national service grew and led me to another term as an AmeriCorps member, this time as an AmeriCorps NCCC team leader, overseeing a group of 10 young adults working together on varied service projects across the country. Then I leveraged the connections, experience, and reputation I had built along the way, along with a lot of persistence, applying to open positions I found on USAJobs to get onto the CNCS staff long term. I'll note that I didn't actually use my non-competitive eligibility to get my career staff position since a few years had passed since I had completed my VISTA term. I got an administrative position in Boston and built experience there that enabled me to transition back to Philly and start overseeing programs here. I didn't really know where I was headed when I started out, and I found that most people don't. As we move through our lives, we learn things about ourselves and the world that take us into neat spaces we may not have considered before. My advice to you as you consider your transition is to do things that are interesting to you in one way or another and develop transferable skills. I think you'll find that'll lead you to places that'll inspire and fulfill you and lead you to do your best work. Take advantage of the trainings on the VISTA campus and the network you have through VISTA and your project's community. Reach out to folks you have things in common with and make sure they know what you're interested in and what you're good at. Build skills and experience, develop connections, and then leverage those into the next step. Be open to the varied opportunities and possibilities that will present themselves to you at this time, even when they surprise you. From here, I'll turn you back over to Molly.
Thank you, Deborah. It's always great to hear from a VISTA alum and a CNCS teammate. And it's a really great reminder that each post-service journey is unique and you may travel down many paths that you didn't expect. So I hope you're well prepared and adventurous. Now let's go back to our activity. Since you've identified some important components of your heart and your head circles, let's move into the hustle section. Look back to your heart and head sections, pick one idea from each, and think about a unique way to combine them into a hustle. This is a time to really play with your ideas and be creative and think outside the box. Don't limit yourself by what opportunities are out in the world today. Think about what opportunities should be out there. How can you make your hustle combine your heart and your head? So go ahead and write down as many hustles as possible and try to surprise yourself. Some of the hustles you write down can be things that you might never really do. You're not deciding the rest of your life right now. You're thinking freely and playing. So again, be creative and get down as much as you can. And when you've taken a little time and come up with a few good ones, I would love to hear from you all in the chat about what you came up for some hustles. You can share your complete thoughts or fragments, but what's your hustle? What would you like to do that combines your head and your heart? Looks like we have a few things coming in. Community character building sounds interesting. Mentorship. Helping students adapt to the study abroad experience, whether in the U.S. or other countries, fantastic. Being a teacher, a professor, becoming a spokesperson, community developer, and a mentor and actor. CIO, Chief Inspiration Officer, President for Nonprofit Board. Doctors Without Borders, Spiritual Director. Let's see, combining social media and food access. A nonprofit leader, using art and graphic design skills to reach American Indian youth. These are really great and creative, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing. We've got an art therapist. That's fantastic. Chief Sustainability Officer, Environmental Analyst. Racial reconciliation, policy changes. Good, there's so many ideas coming through. Thank you all so much for chatting and sharing these. I want to thank you all so much for participating in this activity, and I encourage you to revisit this exercise. I know that I think back to this every once in a while. I first did it about, gosh, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. But come back to this when you have some free time or maybe when you need to take a mental break. And don't be afraid to expand your thinking and ideas. Put down new hearts and new heads and see what new hustles you can find. If you want to learn more about this activity and the organization that developed it, you can visit Echoing Green, and we will paste, there it is, the link goes into the chat right now. So let's go back to Jen before we wrap up. She's going to remind us of some really important administrative tasks to take care as service ends. Jen?
Thanks, Molly. So I just want to take a moment at the end to recap all the administrative tasks associated with members leaving service. You should remember to, 1, complete your future plans form, Part A. Update your forwarding mailing address in my.americorps.gov so we can keep in touch with you. 3, explore the VISTA campus. There's a wealth of information there. If you haven't already explored it, there's more to come. If you relocated to serve at the beginning of your term, submit your close of service travel reimbursement voucher to the VMSU. Don't forget to download your certification of service letter. This is the letter you will need if you want to take advantage of non-compete eligibility when applying for federal jobs. Complete your member exit survey that we mentioned before. This is separate from the future plans form, and we really encourage you to take this survey as it informs us to help future members in the VISTA program. And finally, connect with the AmeriCorps alums. The best way always is to chat, connect, and network. That's where the most exciting things lead. So back to you, Molly.
Thanks again, Jennifer. As we wrap up, we have talked about many different resources on this webinar today. So here is a summary of the big ones, trying to get everything on one page for you. You'll find this list on the VISTA Campus recording page for the webinar, and we're also sharing a few resources that you might think are valuable. If you're ready to start searching for or researching potential jobs, start with the VISTA Job Board, USAJobs, or AmeriCorps alums. Depending on the sector or your interest area, you may also want to explore sites like idealistcareers.org, indeed.com, simplyhired.com, as well as monster.com. If you're considering education, check out the list of grad fairs hosted by idealist.org. These are programs specifically focused on careers that benefit the public, from international affairs to social work and even environmental science. Also explore the listings on Princeton Review, where you can search by specific program types and schools. And we also have links to resources specific to VISTA alums here as well. I highly recommend that you check out the great resources at Preparing for Life After VISTA on the VISTA campus. You can see that link on your screen. And now we will transition to Andy, who will wrap us up.
Great. Well, we're going to get to your questions now in just a minute, but before we do, I'd like to point out that on the right side of your screen, an evaluation poll will open where you can share your feedback about this webinar. We really do take to heart your comments, so if you would please take a moment to answer the questions. It'll help us to improve our webinars and also to get your ideas for other topics that we could offer in future sessions. So now we're going to get to your questions, and a lot of you have already entered questions into the Q&A, and we'll be getting to those. But also I want to invite Melinda to come back and remind those of you who are on the phone how you can ask a question by phone. So Melinda?
Thank you. Once again, please press *1 at this time, and please record your name clearly when prompted. One moment, please.
Great. And while we're waiting for questions to come in from the phone, we'll get to some of those questions that you all have been patiently waiting to hear the answers to. So Jen, I'm going to start with you to go back to when we were first talking about close of service and the cash stipend. Could you just remind us about how it gets apportioned out in the last two payments?
Sure, no problem. So if you chose the cash stipend as your end of service benefit, it is generally paid out in the last two pay periods of your term of service. Typically about $400 is advanced in the next to last pay of your term of service, and then the remaining balance is then distributed in your very last living allowance payment. As a reminder, I spoke briefly about this. There is, just remember that you're not going to get the gross amount. So currently it's $1,500 for regular VISTA members. It's double that for leaders. You don't get the gross amount because in addition to federal income tax being taken out, because it's a cash award, they also take out FICA, or what we call Social Security. So just, you know, don't be surprised if you don't get the full amount.
Great. And also as a reminder, because there's usually about a week delay from when a pay period ends to when that living allowance payment actually shows up in the in their checking account. So those payments will come pretty much right at the end of their service term, and then a couple weeks after they complete service. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can follow the pay schedule. You received one at PSO, if you can remember far back to then, in your PSO book, but also it's posted on the VISTA campus website. It shows every pay period, and if you look at when you end within the pay period, that's going to tell you what your last two pay periods will end up being, and then you can figure out from there, the last two pay periods of your term.
Great. And then just to follow on, we had a couple questions related to this, either for the education award or the cash stipend. So if someone then re-enrolls in another term of VISTA service, they still receive the benefits from their first term at the conclusion of their first term of service. Is that right?
That's correct. So once one term is completed, whatever benefit you chose for that term, you will receive at the end of that term.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So Carrie asked, I put my loans into forbearance, but it's not showing on my AmeriCorps portal. How can I make sure that my education award goes towards my loans?
Okay, so if it's not, if you chose the education award and if it's not showing up, I would give the National Service Hotline a call. We'll investigate that. Meaning the VMSU will investigate that. I mean, it should show up. Once you pick the Ed Award and you're activated for service and you're currently serving, then you should be able to monitor through the Education Award link on My AmeriCorps everything that's going on with the forbearance, like who you've put it into forbearance with. But if you have doubt or questions, I always tell people to whomever you're putting the forbearance with, whatever loan institution or if it's a university or whatever it is, to be in contact with them to make sure that everything processed correctly electronically. There are glitches, sometimes things do happen, and we're here to help you with that process, but you should be able to monitor the status online. So if you're not seeing it or need help with that, just call the National Service Hotline 800-942-2677. Then you can be transferred directly over to VISTA Member Support Unit, and we can further help you.
Great. I'll pause here and check with Melinda to see if we have any callers on the phone with questions.
No phone questions at this time.
Okay, great. Well, we've got plenty here, so we'll keep moving. Next up, a few questions relating to the public service loan forgiveness. So again, Jen, this is in your court. Several people asked if I've put my loans into forbearance during my service term, can those 12 months count towards the 120 months? And if so, what do I have to do to make that happen?
The answer to that is yes, and I'll be honest. The public loan forgiveness, I don't know every in and out and every piece to this. So I don't know, Molly, I don't know if you can speak to this more or not, but I'm certainly willing, whoever's asked that, I'll find out who you are and email you more detailed answer. But yes, those payments, while you're in forbearance, that can count towards it. The exact whole process, I apologize, but I'm just not totally versed on every exact thing you have to do, but I'll definitely get you that answer.
Okay, great. And I will mention, Molly mentioned this earlier, but we do have coming up on July 9th a webinar focused specifically on the Education Award, and we'll cover in much more detail public service loan forgiveness there. I believe there are some steps you need to make a payment with your Education Award towards that loan. Even though it was in forbearance for that 12 months, you make, I believe, a lump sum payment that then gets retroactively applied to those 12 periods so that you can count those towards PSLF. So we'll get more detail around that coming up in a couple of weeks. That's public service loan forgiveness. All right, next up, Grant asks, if I choose to become a VISTA member or a leader in another state and with another organization than where I'm currently located, would I be eligible for travel assistance and other benefits?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. So let's say, so we call that internally, if you re-enroll in another project and you're going to move again another 50 miles or more, then yes, you would be eligible. And we through the future plans form, you indicate re-enrollment at a new project, and the state office in Part C will communicate. They'll work with the other state office you're going over to. Anyway, the information will be communicated to us about your move and where you're going. What you're entitled to, again, is what you'll be entitled to at that point is relocation from mileage from the old project site where you were currently serving to the new one you're going to. In addition, you also require, you're eligible for the what we refer to as the settling in allowance, or that $550, that one-time payment you get at the beginning of service. So you'd be eligible for that as well because, again, you're moving for a whole nother term to a new place, and so that's a benefit to you. Our staff will know through the future plan form and other communication via email from the state offices of when you're going to move and when it's going to occur, and we will post a relocation voucher for that mileage between the old project site and the new project site. You'll get a notification through the portal that the voucher's been posted, and it'll tell you in that notification in a help request on your member homepage how to return the voucher to get reimbursed.
Great. Terrific, Jen. A couple more questions regarding loan deferment and loan forbearance. So Heba asks, will our loan deferment be voided as soon as we finish our year of service?
Okay, would you repeat that again?
She says, will loan deferment, and I'm guessing maybe this would apply to forbearance as well, will loan deferment be voided as soon as we finish our year of service?
Okay, so if what you're asking is, well, we can treat they're two different things, but like for the AmeriCorps forbearance, if what you're asking is once you complete your term of service, your forbearance will end, and then at that point, I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. If not, we can get it clarified. But so yes, your forbearance would end, and then at that point, you're exited from service, and you have access to your education award payment, and then also you have access to a link to, if you want the National Service Trust to pay your interest that accrued during the forbearance, you have access to that. But yes, the forbearance doesn't keep extending. You may be thinking about some, through lending institutions, they have deferments, and sometimes they can be extended or they go on. You have grace periods. There's not a grace period or anything after, once you end your service with AmeriCorps, that forbearance does end.
Okay, great. And just to mention, you sort of hinted at this, that after you finish your term of service, if you're not working immediately or if your income remains at a low level, you could apply directly to your lender to see what kinds of hardship deferment options they might have available.
Yeah, Andy, that's exactly right. And one thing that's nice about the AmeriCorps forbearance is that the AmeriCorps forbearance does, when you have it in forbearance through AmeriCorps specifically, it doesn't count against the amount of times that you can get a deferment from your lending institution. That's why it's a nice benefit. Depending on the lending institution, and of course it's up to each individual lending institution how many times they'll let you do a deferment, that AmeriCorps forbearance doesn't count against those times. So it allows you extra time if needed, if you need to put a loan into deferment while you're still searching for jobs, et cetera.
Okay, great. Now we're going to shift to the Education Award. Several questions here. So Ariane asks, when will our college or university receive the Education Award after service completion?
Okay, so how that works is when you earn the Education Award, you're exited from service. You'll have access to a link to make a payment online. You are the one that's in control of how much money is paid to that university or to that loan institution. So it is on you to make those payments. You can't really set up rolling payments. You can't set up auto-generated payments, unfortunately. So you can pay out the entire balance or you can make payments, but each time you will have to do it yourself. You will have to request that money be released to the lending institution or the university, or if you're going back to school. So that's how that works, and it's done. Everything's done electronically through the My AmeriCorps website.
Great. And related to that, Adam asks, how long does it take for the Ed Award payment to be processed?
It's hard to say. I mean, if everything goes smoothly within 24 to 48 hours, it's pretty instantaneous as long as there aren't any glitches. And by that I mean, what you're doing is when you put in the request, you're asking the trust to release it, and then you can follow or monitor the status. When the status says, if the status of your payment or whatever says pending institution, that means it's in the hands of either the university or the lender, and they're working on it. When it says accepted, when you get to that point where it says accepted, you know that the payment went through. But again, I just want to stress, if you ever have any difficulties and you're monitoring things and you're unsure, you can always call the National Service Hotline, ask to speak with us, and we can take a look. But I will say that members and your side of things, you can see a lot more what's going on from your screens about what's happening with your payments. We have, as staff, we have a more limited view of it, but we can certainly help you get the right answers should you need them.
Great. And one final, well, maybe not final, but one more related to the Ed Award. Chrissy asks, can I apply my Ed Award to myfedloan.com?
Without knowing what myfedloan.com is, I don't know quite how to answer that. I mean, if fed.loan.com, sorry, if they accept funds, federal, if it's an entity that accepts federal funds, and that's what the Education Award, that's what that is. We call it Title IV. If it can accept federal funds, then you should be able to. But my suggestion is whatever that entity is that you're talking about, you need to check with them. You need to explain to them, I have earned an Education Award with AmeriCorps. can I use that as a payment through this, I guess, website?
Okay, great. I'm going to pause here and check with Melinda to see if we have any callers on the phone.
Thank you. We do have one question. Ariane Watson, your line is open.
Hello.
Hi, Ariane. Go ahead.
I had a question regarding going to grad school and non-competitive eligibility. I'm going to be going to grad school right after my AmeriCorps VISTA service is completed, and it's going to take me about 2 years to complete the program. So how would I be able to extend my NCE status, or what are the steps to extending my NCE status?
Sure, that is one of the criteria that can be accepted, but the extension of the NCE status is through the entity you're applying to, the federal organization or federal department. Whomever you're applying to is the one that will extend it for you, and you do it at the time of applying. You mentioned you're you were an AmeriCorps VISTA alum. You would provide a service letter to them, and that you're wanting to extend non-compete status, and again, it's done through them, and you would interact with them when applying to that particular federal organization.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have others on the phone?
No further phone questions.
Okay, great. Well, we do have a couple other NCE-related questions. So Oscar says, I want to work for the government, but I don't want to wait until my service term is over to start applying for federal jobs. Is there a letter that employers will accept to qualify for NCE before I'm actually finished with my service?
No, but what we always tell VISTAs, what we tell members is, go ahead and start applying. And I understand you'll be doing things ahead of time before maybe actually ending. But there's not really a letter we can provide. But what you should indicate to them in the application process is to stress to them that, upon completion, you will qualify for that status. Just make them aware of it, and that hopefully. There's no way to predate it or give them a letter, to hold a spot. It's completely up to, whatever federal department that you're applying to. But, they're becoming more and more familiar with AmeriCorps and VISTA and what that means, and they, of course, know about non-compete. So by just, keeping an open dialogue and communicating with them often helps, and they'll take into consideration the fact that you will qualify for it but you do have to complete your term of service to earn that NCE status. You have to complete it successfully.
Great. And Jen, one final question here related to NCE. Tristan asks, does NCE work for internships or only full-time employment opportunities?
For internship, that's a good question. Well, no, that's a good question I haven't heard before. I can certainly find out. If it's with a government agency, with the federal government, I'm not sure. That's a very good question, and I can find that out for you.
Yeah, that is a new question for all of us, I think. Yeah. All right, shifting gears a little bit, Ryan has a question about serving again. He says, if I transition from a VISTA program to an AmeriCorps state and national one, and there would be a slight overlap, say 2 weeks between the end date of my VISTA and the start date of my AmeriCorps program, what are my options? Is concurrent enrollment permitted? Or would I be required to terminate my VISTA service early?
So to answer, no, concurrent enrollment isn't permitted. So you would have to, your choice would be you'd either have to terminate early and it would be for compelling if you were going to another national service program. It would be for compelling reasons. So you'd earn a prorated end of service benefit, or you just have to line it up so. If whenever the other one started, if it was after your, end date of your VISTA term, that's the ideal situation. But if it's going to fall before, it would be considered early termination for compelling reasons, and you would still get you would get the prorated end of service option, and then, but you would be terminated from the, early from the VISTA term, and then you'd start up with the new AmeriCorps program.
Okay, great. Let's see, other questions here. Benjamin asks, can you tell us how to get payments made on accrued interest on student loans?
Sure. So When you end your service and you've been exited from that term, a link it's an additional link that becomes available under when you click on Ed Award from your member homepage, there'll be an additional link that's accessible and it says make interest accrual payment, and you click that link, and then by doing so and following the instructions electronically, you ask the trust to pay your interest. And then it gets, between the trust and whomever you're asking them to pay it to, it gets negotiated, and that's how that happens. It's all done electronically.
Great. Lisette has a question. She says, can you go over the close of service travel reimbursement? How does the voucher work? And she says, can you get a check earlier than direct deposit, or is the only option around direct deposit? And if you could also remind us the time frame that those payments for close of service travel come.
Sure. So as I mentioned in the presentation, we post vouchers, and there are reasons internally for this, but we post a voucher to your MyAmeriCorps member homepage under a health request no later than 15 days prior to your end of service date. That's when that's our timeline. We have to do that for fiscal reasons. So we post that voucher, and then you return it. Currently, the processing of these vouchers is taking 8 to 10 weeks. So to answer your question, can we speed that up? Unfortunately not. It's the system that we have. I mean, what we're hoping for in the future, we dream about it, is to have automation. But right now, you have to physically print out the voucher, sign it, and put it in the mail to us. And then when it comes to the VISTA Member Support Unit, we look at it, make sure everything's fine, and then this gets sent on to the office that actually processes travel payments. So unfortunately, the voucher is posted no later than 15 days. It might be slightly earlier, but no later than 15 days prior to your end date. That's when you have access to it. If you return it quickly, we notify you as soon as we get it in via email that we've received your voucher, and we send it on to the office that's going to process it. And then, again, it's 8 to 10 weeks for it to be the process to completely finish out and for it to show up in your direct deposit. I wouldn't recommend a paper check. Honestly, they get lost in the mail. I mean, the electronic thing is the way to go. It's the fastest mechanism out there. So that is why I mentioned you should always keep your direct deposit information up to date. When you're ending service, make sure you have a current direct deposit on MyAmeriCorps.
Great. Let's see. A couple other Ed Award questions here. So Tristan asks, if you plan to use a part of your Ed Award for related costs like books or computer, do you still make the payment to the school?
You do, and so for making books and computers, yeah, your Ed Award payment can never can go to you. It has to go to the entity that you're working with. So you would arrange through, I believe most schools have a financial aid office or someone through that office. You would talk to them about how you would go about, say you have this, you would tell them you have an education award, you want to use that as payment to purchase things. You would work it out with that university or college or whatever that you were wanting the funds to go to. Again, it would be done electronically, but the money does have to go directly to the institution. It can't come to you.
Great. All right. Well, we've got a few last-minute questions. The clock is running down. We'll try to get to as many as we can. So Brenda asks regarding service letters and other things in the MyAmeriCorps. She says, do we have access to MyAmeriCorps and VISTA portal for a specific length of time, or is it indefinite?
Oh no! Once you serve, you're always an alum. Well, you'll never go away. I'm kidding. No, you always have access to your MyAmeriCorps account, and obviously, don't try not to forget your password. But even if you did, you could get a new password. But you're always going to have access. That's your account. That's your record of having served. Everything on it, you have access to it through your own, secure password, so it's always there. It's not going to go away. It's going to exist as long as we exist, and we hopefully that's forever.
All right, I think we've got time for one more question. Let's see. Someone says, I might have to terminate my VISTA year early because of the instability of my project site. I know I would be eligible for a prorated education award, but because I would only have a month to complete my service, I won't be able to finish my service year. Will I get NCE status?
Unfortunately, that benefit doesn't. I mean, even if you terminate for compelling reasons, unfortunately, the NCE status is only available if you complete a full term. It's contingent upon that.
Right. Okay. So we're going to have to leave it there. I appreciate everyone who has submitted questions, and if we didn't get to your question, I apologize. I know there were some related to the education award or loan forbearance. We're going to be covering those in just a couple weeks in our upcoming webinar. We've also got an on-demand version of that, so I encourage you to look at that. I want to thank all of our panelists today, Ryan Cassett and Deborah Lytle, both VISTA alums, for sharing their experiences with us, and of course Molly Pelzer and Jennifer Brooks, who work here with the VISTA program. I want to thank all of you for the really tremendous information that you've shared. And thank you all for participating today. I would like to make sure you're aware of our next session, which is coming up on July 9th. And you can find all of our webinars on the VISTA campus on the Webinars for Vistas page. If you have any questions or want to get in touch with us, our email address is vistawebinars@cns.gov. So thank you all.